Hello once again, this is Uncle Jimmy with Jimmy's Train Station and Travel Adventures, and today we're going to visit another museum. We are in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and I'm doing a series of things off and on here in Gettysburg, trying to hit all the museums eventually. There's so many to see and so many to film, but we're visiting the Gettysburg Diorama Museum here on Baltimore Street. And what it is, it's a layout of the town of Gettysburg, of the town during the battle, and it's like a light show, and it explains the 3 days of the battle, and you sit and it's a lighted show with little like train model diorama, and it's located on Baltimore Street. You can always recognize it by the great big arch that's out in front of it, and they have photo ops here. You can stick your head in there and be a Union soldier. Then they have one up here of Abraham Lincoln, and it's right across from American Fuel gas station on Baltimore Street in Gettysburg. Also, it's $5 an adult, so it's not very expensive at all, and they have a gift shop and a little museum in here also. And I just noticed there's another museum behind it called Spirits of Gettysburg. I'm gonna have to see what that's all about too eventually. But the lady here is nice enough to let me film during my visit, so I call ahead and always ask permission before I actually film things. But here's another photo op of Abraham Lincoln, and sometimes I fail to mention the prices of things, and I'm sorry when I do that. Like a couple weeks ago I did a video on the Maryland Health and Medical Museum. That's absolutely free to get into because that's one of our national museums outside of DC and Baltimore. And then when I did the video of me and my friend Jack at the Farnsworth house doing the cellar tour, that was $10 a piece. So I'm sorry if I forget the prices sometimes, but I'll try to remember in the future. So sit back and enjoy this video of the Gettysburg Diorama Museum here at the Gettysburg History Center. I hope you enjoyed the blog. Follow me. So folks, sorry about that. It wasn't $5, it was actually $10 an adult, but it's worth it. But I'm in the Diorama Room now. I wanted to point out this wax figure of General Dan Sickles, who lost his leg in the Battle of Gettysburg on the second day of the battle. It's a very good likeness of him. Yes. And then this is the layout of the diorama. So we have like 9 minutes before it starts, so I want to be able to show you. It's a complete layout of the town of Gettysburg during the battle, July 1st, 3rd, 1863. I think those are the two farmhouses. Little round top and Devil's Den. So here they came. That'd be the wheat field there in the middle, where around all the trees are. Huh? Center of the diorama is the actual town of Gettysburg during that time. There's the cemetery hill with the National Cemetery. And the actual town of Gettysburg. Have the seminary there in the background where the first day's battle was. We'll walk around and see that. So this would actually be the first day's battle, Chambersburg Pike right here. And this here would be them lining up for Pickett's charge. which this road here going this way is the Emmitsburg Road. So right in that area is the angle. So like I said, this is a light show, which we'll start here in about 5 minutes or so. But there's more to it than this. You have the gift shop out here, and the front entrance has some things I'm going to show you afterwards. A lot of artwork on the walls here. And they have some little dioramas set up back here, along with some Confederate soldier here. I believe this is Major General Longstreet. And this is a diorama East Cavalry Field here. Now the light is out on this, but this is Meade's headquarters. But it's supposed to be its nighttime scene. That's a Seminary Ridge. Culp's Hill, which a lot of people don't visit that much of the battlefield, but it was an important strategic part of the second day. The Confederates could have actually, if they marched on a little bit longer into the night, could have taken Culp's Hill and would have had the high ground. This is the Trosso Farm. That's where General Sickles got his leg wound during the battle and had his right leg amputated. This is McPherson's Ridge, first day's battle. And General Lee's headquarters, which is out on Chambersburg Pike, which he set up his headquarters. I got some pictures here of citizens during the time. Some Confederate money. Some relics found on the battlefield. There's a 75 caliber British flintlock musket, which they did have different types of rifles that were used. Different size cannonballs. Now that's a 12-pounder there. That's what took off, or well, wounded General Sickles' leg, which had to be amputated. There's a Remington 1861. I think it's like a. There's a Stevens single shot 22 caliber pistol. There's a Remington 1861 Derringer. There's your Springfield and your, that's a Tower cap lock. I don't see an Enfield rifle. It might be over here. But there's your backpack. 1st Pennsylvania, Company C. Different saddles. That's a cavalry rifle there. It's a Burnside carbine, breech loaded. Some shell fragments and grape shot. Different projectiles. that were used in the rifle barrel. Different bullets. It's a trunk. Colonel's trunk. Belonged to James Duncan Graham. Now this is Abraham Lincoln's life casket. This was actually done when he was living. They have a death cast of him too. But to get his hand to relax, his right hand, he held some piece of wood or something. I remember they said when they casted it. So we'll sit back and enjoy the show here in a few minutes and let you see the 3-day battle. All right, folks, the program's about to begin.
I'm digging it.
Welcome to the largest military diorama in the United States. The diorama is historically accurate, depicting the 3 days of Gettysburg with over 20,000 hand-painted soldiers, horses, cannons, wagons, and buildings.
You are now facing west on the diorama. You are located here on the Emmitsburg Road. Turning right, you are looking north towards the town of Gettysburg. Turning left, you are looking south towards the fields of Pickett's Charge, and further south to the Round Tops.
Please join us now on a journey back into time. Gettysburg is the result of 2 years of war that has not brought about a decisive conclusion. General Robert E. Lee, the commander of the Army of Northern Virginia, has realized that, although he has won great victories over the Union's Army of the Potomac, logistics are heavily in favor of the North. Lee feels that a decisive victory on Northern soil may force the North to sue for peace. After his successive victories at Fredericksburg in December of 1862 and Chancellorsville in May of 1863, his feelings are close to the truth. Moving his army north from his positions along the Rappahannock River in Virginia in early June, he uses the Blue Ridge Mountains of the Shenandoah Valley as a screen. With bands playing Dixie and Bonnie Blue Flag, he is on the soil of Pennsylvania before the Army of the Potomac is even aware of where he is. By the last day of June, his army is spread out from Chambersburg and northeast to Carlisle and Harrisburg. On that same day, Union cavalry under General John Buford ride into the county seat of Adams County, Pennsylvania, Gettysburg. The town of Gettysburg has a population of 2,200 souls on this last day of June. 2 institutions of higher learning, Pennsylvania College, now called Gettysburg College, and the Lutheran Theological Seminary, are located here. Major roads of the region all come together with the town of Gettysburg as their hub. It is a rural community with farming and light industry as its economic mainstay. Nothing would be the same again for Gettysburg after this last day of June of 1863. Robert E. Lee, on this same day, learns 2 things of importance. One, that the Army of the Potomac is now in Maryland and moving up into Pennsylvania. He also learns that they have a new commander. General George Gordon Meade has taken over the Army from General Joseph Hooker 2 days earlier. Meade commands a force of 90,000 plus Federals, and Lee's army is at peak strength of 75,000. Lee reacts quickly, ordering his Army Corps to concentrate towards Cashtown and Gettysburg by July 1st. stage is set for the great confrontation when General Buford, the Union cavalry commander, camps his troops west and north of town on the night of June 30th. As the sun rises, Buford receives word from his vedettes that the Confederates are advancing down the Cashtown Pike, the present-day Chambersburg Pike, Route 30. By about 8 a.m., the Confederate division of A.P. Hill's 3rd Corps was in front of Buford's dismounted line on McPherson Ridge, and the battle for Gettysburg was on. Buford's dismounted troops held the line for 2 hours against the advancing Confederates. By 10 a.m., Buford, contemplating withdrawal, was relieved to have General John Reynolds, 1st Corps commander, ride up. Reynolds quickly agreed with Buford that the line should be held, telling Buford to hold on a little longer. He rode back to the Emmitsburg Road, south of town, to push the troops on. Quickly, across the fields in front of the Lutheran Seminary, comes a division of the 1st Corps. Advancing along with the famed Iron Brigade, John Reynolds is shot from his horse and dies. The Iron Brigade continues into the woods and smacks into a Confederate brigade advancing up from Willoughby Run. This strike by the Iron Brigade is so hard that it forces the Confederates back down over the run, leaving many of the Confederates captured. As the infantry of the North takes up a new battle line on the ridge, Confederates north of the Cashtown Pike drive the Union soldiers in that area from the field, taking possession of an unfinished railroad cut running parallel with the pike into town. These Confederates fire into the right flank of the remaining Union line south of the pike, causing 3 Union regiments to take matters into their own hands. Shifting the line from its position facing west, they turned right and all charged north across the pike at their tormentors. Again, the charge was quick, and again the Confederates were taken off guard. They were forced down into the cut, and they were ordered to surrender rather than be shot like fish in a barrel. By charging up and taking the higher ground at the edge of the cut, the Union forced the Confederates to give up. This was one of the last good moments for the North on that day. From here on in, it was almost all downhill for the Union Army. With the increase in strength of the final 2 divisions of the 1st Corps arriving, the Union line then extended north from the Hagerstown Road in a slight easterly direction across the Cashtown Pike and to the Mummersburg Road in front of Oak Hill. As more Union forces arrived, also did the Confederates bring up more troops. As noon approached, so did a division of Hill's 3rd Confederate Corps, along with more Confederate artillery. Between 12:30 and 1 p.m., 2 more corps were on the field, 1 from each army. Rhodes' division of Ewell's 2nd Confederate Corps and Oliver Howitt's 11th Union Army Corps. As Howard was deploying 2 divisions north of town and leaving 1 division on Cemetery Hill, Rhodes was taking possession of the high ground known as Oak Hill. Thus denied the high ground of Oak Hill, Howard's 2 divisions were deployed facing north and northwest in the open fields north of town and close to Pennsylvania College. A gap quickly developed between Howard's left and the 1st Corps' right. The extreme right of the 1st Corps was held by a Union brigade fronting both west and north over the Mummersburg Road. Against this position, the Confederates hurled their brigades. 1 brigade of Confederate soldiers marching over Forney's Fields, south of the Mummersburg Road, was striking for the extreme right of the 1st Corps line. Unbeknownst to the Confederates, Union soldiers were hidden from view behind a stone wall, and when the Confederates came within range, they rose up and poured a deadly fire into the Confederate brigade. So quick was this fire that the dead and wounded looked like they had all laid down in line. The Confederate brigade lost over 800 casualties and was driven back over the Mummersburg Road to Oak Hill. Rhodes sent in another brigade, but it too was checked. By 3 p.m., the numerical strength of the Confederates was about to seal the fate of the 2 Union Corps on the field. A Confederate division of Ewell's 2nd Corps was now coming on the field, and in a great example of being in the right place at the right time, found itself on the extreme right flank of the 11th Union Corps line. The attack came and the Union line went rolling up from the right front and right rear, the Confederates forced the Union line to fall back and begin to break. Almost simultaneously, the First Corps line began to fold, Union troops backing up to the railroad cut on Seminary Ridge, and the remaining First Corps troops being pushed back on the left flank forced the whole corps back to Seminary Ridge for a brief stand, and then a general retreat and rout of elements of the Union line began. The Union troops retreated through the town of Gettysburg, many being captured as they got lost in the streets and alleys of the town. Somehow, the remnants of both Union Corps, 1st and 11th, made it back to Cemetery Hill, and there they rallied to make a stand. The Confederates had won a great victory on the first day, a victory on a field that neither General Lee nor Meade wanted to fight on, but nevertheless one that the South was able to take the greatest advantage of. With the decision by General Ewell to use his own discretion and not attack Cemetery Hill as Lee had wanted, the fighting on July 1st was over. As night fell on July 1st, the lights of the town and campfires surrounding the town sprang into life. And with those sparks of light, the concerns of the commanders turned to the dispositions of the Army's units and their deployment for July 2nd's possible renewal of the battle. The Confederate Army took up positions along and in front of Seminary Ridge, as well as securing the town to an area just short of the base of Cemetery Hill. Ewell's 2nd Corps also occupied areas north of Culp's Hill, extending to Benner's Hill. With Johnson's division of Ewell's Corps moving into the Gettysburg lines, all of Ewell's Corps and all of Hill's Corps were now at Gettysburg. The 2 divisions of Longstreet's Corps had moved up and were in marching distance of the town. Only Pickett's 5,000-man division was still in the Chambersburg area. The 12th Corps under Slocum was on Culp's Hill. Remnants of the 1st and 11th extended from Culp's to Cemetery Hill. The 2nd Corps under Hancock reached the field and took a position on Cemetery Ridge running south from the Bryan Farm. The 3rd Corps was assigned to the low area near the Wycott Farm and north of the Little Round Top. Close by to support the 3rd were the lead elements of the 5th Corps under Sykes. The largest corps, John Sedgwick's 6th Corps, was on the march from Manchester, Maryland, 35 miles away. As the Union forces took up position, they formed the now famous Fishhook defense line at Gettysburg. The right flank anchored on Culp's Hill, the point of the hook. The semicircle of the hook bending around Cemetery Hill. The shank moving south along Cemetery Ridge, and finally the eye of the hook, Little Round Top. Again, please keep this Fishhook defense line in your thoughts as the 2nd and 3rd day's battle takes place. As morning turned to afternoon on July 2nd, one of Meade's Corps commanders was agitated by the position his 3rd Corps was placed in. Rather than the low area north of Little Round Top, he preferred the higher ground adjacent to the Emmitsburg Road. Without orders or even the knowledge of General Meade, Dan Sickles moved his whole corps out in a westerly and southwesterly direction for the higher ground. They came on as if on parade, flags flying, to the amazement, disbelief, and complete dismay of the rest of the Army. When they were finally placed in line, they formed what is now called Sickles' Salient. Humphrey's division spread a thin line south from the Cadorby Farm area to the Peach Orchard along the Emmitsburg Road. Here, Birney's division took over, placing brigades from the Peach Orchard running southeast to Devil's Den. This overextended line left the whole Union Fishhook in great danger. Not only was it thin, but Sickles had placed no troops on Little Round Top, the key to the southern portion of the line. Upon Meade's arrival at the center of Sickles' line and seeing his displeasure, Sickles offered to withdraw. Meade recognized that the heavy skirmishing and artillery fire was the prelude to an all-out attack. He ordered Sickles to hold, and he would send in the whole 5th Corps and parts of the 2nd to assist. He would hold the newly arrived elements of the 6th Corps in reserve to assist the right of his line. At 4 p.m., Confederate General James Longstreet launched his attack in echelon. Brigades of Hood's and McClaw's divisions moving in one at a time from their right to their left. The idea was to roll up the Union left flank and drive it north parallel with the Emmitsburg Road against the Union line on North Cemetery Ridge and Hill. As the Confederates struck, the hills known as Big Round Top and Little Round Top began to receive the attention they deserved. Big Round Top, covered in trees, was ruled out because of the lack of opportunity to use artillery or infantry in the heavy woods. But the open western slope of Little Round Top invited military occupation. As the Confederate attack pushed into Devil's Den, the only Union presence on that hill was a detachment of Signal Corps soldiers and one general, Governor Kimball Warren of the Union Engineers. In this case, just enough to save that hill. Warren, recognizing the danger to the Union line, sent for help. That help came in the form of Colonel Strong Vincent's brigade of the 5th Corps. The 4 regiments came up and took a position on the south and southwestern portion of the hill. The last regiment in line, the 20th Maine, under Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, with Pennsylvania, New York, and Michigan regiments successively to their right. Also coming up in the nick of time to help was Weed's brigade and Hazlitt's battery, which was moved up by hand. The Confederates struck hard and repeatedly at the Union defenders, finally bending the 20th Maine back like a bobby pin. Chamberlain was about to enter into the history books. With his troops reduced by half, almost out of ammunition, Chamberlain gave the order, "Bayonets!" And then, straightening his lines, he ordered the charge. The attack caught the Alabamians of Law's brigade, and especially the 15th Alabama, already exhausted from repeated attempts to dislodge the Maine troops, totally off guard. They were forced to either surrender or run for their lives. Chamberlain's action on this day was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. While this action was taking place, other names were going into the pages of military history. The Peach Orchard, the Wheat Field, Trosso Farm, and Devil's Den, all overrun or captured by the Confederates and now entered into the books of this nation's history. The fighting in the Wheat Field and Lower Wheat Field would result in over 6,000 casualties in just a few hours, making it one of the most deadly fields in our history. As day ended on the southern portion of the field, the Confederacy had gained ground, but not the ground they needed. Little Round Top and the lower section of Cemetery Ridge was still in Union hands. As Longstreet's attack against Sickles Salient on the Union left flank was at full pitch, Lee had ordered Ewell to demonstrate and strike against the Union's right at Culp's Hill, the point of the hook. The attack, which was supposed to be in concert with Longstreet, did not get started until 6 p.m., 2 hours after the attack south of town. The attack met with limited success on the eastern slope, as most of the Union's 12th Corps had been pulled from their entrenchments to assist the 3rd Corps on the Union left. But a Union brigade was strongly entrenched on the top of Culp's Hill, and it would be this brigade that would hold until nightfall, force the action on the hill to a close. As the Confederates were attacking Culp's Hill, 2 brigades of Confederates were moving around Culp's Hill and charging up East Cemetery Hill. Their attack blew away remnants of the 11th Corps, defending that section of the Union line and establishing a line of control on this portion of the Union position. But as darkness closed in on these 2 lone southern brigades, so did Union reinforcements from all directions. In the darkness, with only the bolt of light from rifle discharge and not sure who they were firing at, the Confederates were finally forced back down the hill. This ended the action of July 2nd. July 3rd, 1863. The final act of Gettysburg is about to take place. Decisions must be made. Decisions that will literally change the course of our nation's history and the world we live in. As the night of July 2nd wears on, General Meade will meet with his corps commanders at his headquarters in the Trosso Farm on Town Road. Although some are still intimidated by Lee's abilities, most will offer to stay and fight. Meade will agree. One more day. He even suggests that if Lee attacks on the 3rd, it will be on the Union center. Lee makes his decision. He will attack the Union center, break the Union Army apart. In the early morning hours of July 3rd, he will meet with General James Longstreet, his old war horse. Longstreet will argue against the attack, but Lee, remembering his great victory at Chancellorsville, will order the assault. He will use the fresh division of George Pickett, 5,000 Virginians of Longstreet's First Corps who have not taken part in the battle as yet, to spearhead the charge. He will support them with the brigades of 2 divisions of A.P. Hill's 3rd Corps under the temporary command of Johnston Pettigrew and Isaac Trimble. Lee will also order approximately 145 cannons to be placed in position to soften the Union line prior to the assault. The overall commander is General James Longstreet, the same man who does not believe the attack will succeed, but he will do his duty this day. As July 3rd dawns, the stage is being set. One of Lee's plans is crushed quickly. The Confederates were to renew the attack at Culp's Hill, but the Union strikes first. By 12 noon, the fighting on Culp's Hill is over, with the Confederates losing the ground gained on the 2nd and the Federals in control of Culp's Hill. As noon turns, the quiet of the battlefield is shattered at 1 p.m. 2 cannon shots ring out.
Everyone, fire! Number 2, fire!
The curtain goes up on the single most dramatic act at Gettysburg, Pickett's charge. For nearly 2 hours, the Confederate guns belched forth their noise and devastation, opposed by over 100 Union guns. The sound is not unlike every summer thunderstorm you ever heard, rolled up into one thunderous roar. Shakes and rumbles, and people will say it is heard from Harrisburg to Philadelphia. The Confederate artillerymen's goal was to bust up that main Union line behind the stone wall and on the crest of the ridge. They failed. Due to the thick smoke of the ignited black powder hanging heavy over the field, enhanced by the heavy humidity, their fire is more directed at the east side of the ridge rather than the western slope and crest. By the time the Confederates slackened their fire, the Union rear and reserve has been disrupted, but the main Union line, 6,000 strong, is still intact and still waiting. A note is sent by E. Porter Alexander, 1st Corps Chief of Artillery, to Longstreet. The time to launch the assault is now. General Pickett is with Longstreet as he reads the note and asks permission to go forward. After a second request, Longstreet nods his head. Yes. Pickett mounts and rides out. The signal to begin the assault is given. The battlefield of Gettysburg goes silent. Lee has envisioned 15,000 troops stepping off, but in actuality 12,500 line up on Seminary Ridge. 1 mile away, the Union troops wait and watch as the magnificent and terrible spectacle of massed infantry line up for what is now obvious to all. The officers of the South raise their swords for family, home, and country. Forward! As the massed brigades, 9 in all, with 2 in support, step out, the unsilenced Union artillery begins to respond from Cemetery Hill to Little Round Top. The batteries fire into the advancing Confederate lines. Men are blown into the air, mangled, wounded, or dead, but the remainder continue forward. They believe in Robert E. Lee. As they begin to reach the Emmitsburg Road, Pickett's 3 brigades angle to the left, all now focusing their attention on a small copse of trees on the ridge. Both flanks of the Confederates are struck. Ohio troops strike the Confederate left, turning them back and inward. Vermont troops strike the right, causing horrible damage to the Confederates as they rush past them towards the copse of trees. They are over the Emmitsburg Road, charging up towards the rock wall that runs in front of the trees and then angles up the ridge to the crest. By now, 6,000 Union rifles have joined the Northern artillery, devastating the ranks of the Confederates. General Armistead, Pickett's last brigadier standing, raises his sword, jumps on the rock wall. Come on, Virginians! Now, beyond belief, they are in amongst the Union artillery and infantry. The fight goes, and they go. The struggle for the ankle sees men shout, punch, club, stab each other. And as seconds become minutes, time stands still. And then, as quickly as it began, it ends. The gray wave that rolled over the green ocean is broken by the blue rock. Of the 12,500 soldiers who began the charge, only a little over 6,000 will return. As they come back, the commander of the Army of Northern Virginia, his hair just a little grayer, steps out of the woodline. Sitting on his great war-horse Traveler, with hat off, Robert E. Lee meets his men. It is all my fault. I asked too much of you. While Pickett's charge was coming to its final moments, 3 miles east of Gettysburg, at the intersection of the Hanover Road and the Low Dutch Road, Union cavalry would stop Jeb Stuart's cavalry from disrupting the Union rear. And with a gallant but futile 5 p.m. cavalry attack against the extreme Confederate right, the Battle of Gettysburg was over. General Robert E. Lee had forgotten one important element of this war. All of his victories were on Southern soil. This was the North. The men behind that Cemetery Ridge rock wall were Pennsylvanians defending their home. They were backed up by regiments from New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Michigan, Ohio, Vermont, Massachusetts, all the soldiers of the North. That night when General Lee learned the magnitude of his loss, he would say, "This has been a sad day for us, a sad day." Lee might now have known that all the roads from Gettysburg could lead to Appomattox. In the hindsight of history, President Woodrow Wilson, the first elected Southern president after the Civil War, would say of his heritage that he would honor the courage of those who fought, but he was glad they lost. They were and are brave Americans, and this poem speaks well for them. But as they carried their torn red battle flags into the twilight of their lost cause, they marched straight into a legend that should live as long as the American people care to remember anything of the American past. For the Union soldiers, their words came 4½ months later, November 19, 1863, the dedication of the National Cemetery. The keynote speaker was Edward Everett of Massachusetts. He spoke well and long, over 2 hours. While he spoke, a tired and worn man sat nearby. He was the 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln. And while he waited to make a few appropriate remarks dedicating this cemetery, I hope that somehow he knew of the American future. Why would 51,000 total casualties on both sides, including over 7,000 dead outright, have to be sacrificed? So that Teddy Roosevelt could be bullied for America, that Black Jack Pershing would lead the All-American Division and save the world for democracy in World War I, that Amelia Earhart would fly over the oceans brave and true, that Dr. Jonas Salk would give us a cure for polio, and General George Patton would lead the 3rd United States Army against the Nazis at Bastogne, and his relatives would die on this field wearing Confederate gray. That Ira Hayes, a Pima Indian, would help raise an American flag on Iwo Jima. That a man named Jackie Robinson would stand up at home plate, Ebbets Field, Brooklyn, New York, and when he swung his bat, America would cheer. That Dr. Martin Luther King would have a dream. Neil Armstrong would step on the moon. And a lady named Krista McAuliffe would reach for the stars. She wouldn't make it, but she would reach. Mr. Lincoln would be proud to know that the people of these United States would elect presidents from the North and the South, from East and West, truly one nation under God. And Mr. Lincoln would know that that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion was truly worth the horrible price that was paid. And then finally his moment came. Mr. Lincoln stood up, and in less than 3 minutes, he told the Americans of that day and every American yet to come why it was that we, the Americans, were willing to give the last full measure of devotion. It was simple to explain. Why? So that this nation under God should have a new birth of freedom. And that government of the people, by the people, and for the people, shall not perish from the earth. At about 4 p.m. on July 3rd, a short distance from where you now sit, this nation became indivisible, and the long road of liberty and justice for all began. Thank you for visiting us. Have a safe and pleasant stay in Gettysburg.
So I recommend if you ever come to Gettysburg and visit the battlefield, you may want to start here if you're not sure about how the battle went, and it'll give you the explanation of how the battle went, make your tour a little easier to understand. So I hope you enjoyed that presentation. We're going to go out and see the front of the museum before we leave. So follow me through the gift shop.
It is. That's like about 2.5 regular dogs.
I'm going to sell a little bit of everything. Keppies, Lincoln hats, souvenirs.
Cold coffee's good for you.
Yeah.
We put these floors in this year. We had carpet and it just got so ruined. Yeah.
These are
Those were $9.95.
95. Yeah. Okay. I had to think for a second.
Yep. I know how to do. Thank you for your time.
babies?
Yeah, they are. They're from.
What are they, anyways?
So we didn't get to see this part of the museum. I got a few things to see. Some World War II memorabilia. 9/11. Wax figure of Abraham Lincoln. Neat little diorama. Different bullets and cannonballs, creep shot. Here's a diorama of the famous sharpshooter dead at the Devil's Den. His body was actually moved by Matthew Brady for this photograph. He died elsewhere on the field. It's been proven. There's an example of a cavalryman and his horse.
Well, we have like the stubs from the battle bus. The bus package, yes.
Tickets charged. This is a Spangler Spring, which was a natural spring that both sides got their water from near Copp's Hill. This is the Trosso Farm with the scene of the dead horses.
We went on a tour this morning, and I mean, we were basically on the bus. I think it would have been better just to walk.
And this here, I believe, is the railroad cut. Yes. The Iron Brigade, which was Michigan and Wisconsin troops. And finally, this is a one that looks like Pickett's Charge.
I didn't have binoculars. I used my.
Yeah, well, even if you have really great binoculars, there's no way that you can see
You're gonna see everything.
everything.
You can't see.
So once again, this is Gettysburg Diorama Museum, and it's located on Baltimore Street. And like I said, I suggest coming here and visiting. It's a neat little museum for the price of $10. Give you a perspective of how the battle went for the first 3 days, the 3 days of the battle, July 1st through the 3rd of 1863. And we'll make it a little easier when you actually go out on the field and give you a little more understanding of the battle. Once again, this has been Uncle Jimmy, Jimmy's Train Station and Travel Adventures. If you're watching this, please subscribe to my channel. Give it a thumbs up. Feel free to leave comments, suggestions of other things you'd like to see in the future. Until next time, go out and have your own adventures and enjoy life. And this has been Uncle Jimmy. Till next time, goodbye.